Senate compromise. Republicans and Democrats agree on a bill to give Congress a say in the deal to curb Iran's nuclear program. No promises. Nigeria's new president offers little hope of rescuing schoolgirls abducted 1 year ago. Ford's theater drama. One of America's saddest tragedies played out 150 years ago today at this Washington, D.C. theater. And called to serve. Pope Francis warns Christians not to hoard riches, but to offer them in service to the needy. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, April 14th, 2015. Good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill agree they want a place at the negotiating table with Iran. In an unusual bipartisan move, legislators joined forces today against the White House. They emerged with a compromise that would severely undercut any deal Congress doesn't like. Susanne LaFrankie has more from Capitol Hill tonight. Suzanne?
Brian, there's not a lot of agreement between Republicans and Democrats here in Washington, but stopping a nuclear Iran is something they agree on and at the heart of this unusual bipartisan legislation. Many on the committee say Tehran is bent on becoming a nuclear-armed powerhouse in the Middle East, and that simply cannot happen.
I think this puts Congress in its rightful role.
Republicans and Democrats demand the White House give them a say in nuclear negotiations with Iran.
On behalf of the American people, before the congressionally mandated sanctions are lifted, that we on their behalf ensure that this is something that holds Iran accountable.
Congress can always take action. This gives us an orderly path forward. I would hope the administration would support that.
This morning, for a second straight day, Secretary of State John Kerry personally lobbied senators seeking more time to cut a deal with Iran. President Obama, who wants to bolster his foreign policy legacy, has kept Congress out of negotiations. But a Senate committee is moving ahead with its own bipartisan legislation, which would cut the agreement review period in half to 30 days, give the president 12 days to accept or veto any congressional resolutions, and authorize Congress 10 days to override a presidential veto. House Speaker John Boehner says the House will act quickly to pass the Senate's legislation.
Congress absolutely should have the opportunity to review this deal. We shouldn't just count on the administration, who appears to want a deal at any cost.
For months, the White House has been threatening to veto any congressional action, but a bipartisan front seems to have reversed that strategy.
The president would be willing to sign the proposed compromise that is working its way through the committee today.
Late this afternoon, that Senate panel unanimously passed the bill. The legislation now goes to the Senate floor for a full vote, where it is expected to easily pass. Meanwhile, White House officials who are part of an international team continuing to negotiate with Iran face a deadline of June 30th. Brian?
All right, Susanne LaFrankie on Capitol Hill, thank you. Tzvi Kahn is a senior policy analyst for the Foreign Policy Initiative, a nonprofit organization promoting U.S. engagement in the world. Tzvi, should Congress have the right to weigh in on this potential deal, and why?
It absolutely should. Iran represents the single greatest challenge facing the United States today. It poses a threat not only to the United States itself, but also to those of our allies, and it raises the possibility of a nuclear arms race in the region that could destabilize the entire Middle East. In this context, it's all the more important that when the Obama administration seeks to reach a deal that would enable, effectively delay, at best, Iran from getting the bomb, rather than prevent Iran from getting the bomb, it's entirely appropriate for Congress to exercise its historic oversight role and ensure that it could step forward and act.
There are a lot of people, especially in Congress, who are very skeptical about Iran even being trustworthy. You know, is any agreement worth anything? Is this just a giant waste of time?
Well, in the context of the current agreement, Iran cannot be trusted at all, because the current agreement does not really impose the kind of safeguards and enforcement mechanisms that would ensure that it would comply with the deal. So, if the administration pursues the current path it's on, then when it comes to stopping Iran from getting the bomb, it is, yes, a waste of time.
So Iran wants the sanctions lifted. Congress actually levied those sanctions. Have they worked?
Well, they haven't exactly worked in terms of the ultimate goal, which is preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. What they have done, however, is effectively brought Iran to the table. And that's important because what it shows is that Iran is susceptible to pressure. And it's precisely because that pressure worked in getting Iran to the table that the pressure must in fact continue. Iran has to know that if it doesn't make the appropriate concessions on its nuclear program, then those sanctions will continue in force. What the message we're sending to Iran right now is that it may receive significant sanctions relief, even if it does not, in the end, dismantle its nuclear program, and that's problematic.
What do you think would make this a good deal for America and the world?
Well, in fact, over the few years, the president and his administration have in fact articulated precisely what those standards are. Those standards are that Iran must dismantle significant portions of its nuclear infrastructure. And it cannot simply tinker with it. It cannot simply move it abroad. It cannot simply maintain it for research purposes. It actually must get rid of it and impose the safeguards in place such that it cannot get it back.
And this deal does not include that dismantling at this point?
No, it does not. On the contrary.
All right. Tzvi Kahn joining us from the Foreign Policy Initiative. Thanks so much for your input tonight.
Thank you so much.
And now some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. The White House says President Obama is removing Cuba from a list of state sponsors of terrorism. The expected move is a key step in the president's bid to normalize relations between the two countries. Congress will now review the required reports and certifications before any change can become official. The president pledges $200 million in humanitarian aid to Iraq. The money to help those displaced by ISIS terrorists is not what the nation's leader is asking for.
I've made clear from the outset that ISIL is an enemy, and we will make sure that they do not threaten the United States, and we will go after them wherever they are.
That commitment to Iraqi's Prime Minister, Haider al-Abadi, appears to fall short of his request for greater military support. The Iraqi leader told reporters just yesterday the increase in U.S. airstrikes, weapons, and training helped push ISIS back. Now he says Iraq needs more support to finish the job. The two leaders also discussed Iran's involvement in the fight against the terrorists in Iraq, a point of concern for the United States. Turkey's president condemns Pope Francis for calling the slaughter of Armenians by Ottoman Turks genocide. During Sunday Mass, marking 100 years since the killings began, Francis said it was his duty to honor the memory of the innocent men, women, and children who were murdered. Turkey accuses the Pope now of spreading hatred and unfounded claims. They recalled the ambassador to the Holy See. Turkey's president called for a study to determine what actually happened 100 years ago. The Australian cardinal, tapped by Pope Francis to bring order to the Vatican's finances, is moving. 4 months after raising eyebrows by taking up residence in the Vatican Bank, Cardinal George Pell is moving into the permanent offices of his New Economy Secretariat. The move coincides with a major reorganization of the Vatican's financial structures ordered by Pope Francis. Hillary Clinton makes her first 2016 campaign appearance today, stopping at a small Iowa coffee shop. Iowa is a key early primary state. Clinton placed third there in 2008. Today's stop is in line with her new strategy of holding small events that allow her to speak with individual voters.
Everyone knows who Hillary Clinton is, but nobody really knows what kind of president she wants to be. So she needs to reintroduce her campaign message.
Clinton was to meet with students at a nearby community college today, and she's not planning to hold a large kickoff rally for several weeks to come. Republican Senator Marco Rubio began his presidential campaign last night, taking direct aim at Democrat Hillary Clinton.
Just yesterday, a leader from yesterday began a campaign for president by promising to take us back to yesterday.
When we spoke with Senator Rubio last year, he was uncertain then if he would run for president. But what was clear, even then, was how he felt about Clinton's ideas and how they were out of date. He also made clear his stance on traditional marriage.
I do think that she suffers from a liability that many in the left suffer from, and that is they want to continue to invest in broken, antiquated ideas that didn't even work that well in the 20th century. Higher education is a perfect example. School choice is another example. They want to continue to tie us up with 20th century institutions that just don't work very well anymore. we're accused of being bigots and haters, and that's unfair because my motivation for supporting traditional marriage has nothing to do with a desire to discriminate against anyone. It's the desire to continue to enshrine and elevate in our laws an institution, the marriage of one man and one woman, that's proven to be very beneficial to our country and our society.
Rubio, whose parents emigrated from Cuba, criticizes the Obama administration's move to normalize relations with Cuba and also the White House's immigration policies. Pope Francis says that as Christians, we must not hoard riches, but offer them in service to the needy.
Di chiedere la grazia di la povertà.
In his morning homily at the Casa Santa Marta, where he lives, the Pope's saying we should ask for the gift of poverty, not misery, but poverty. He defines poverty as the capacity to manage possessions with generosity and for the common good, referring to today's readings from Acts of the Apostles. Coming up, where are they now? It's been a year since terrorists kidnapped hundreds of Nigerian schoolgirls. And we explore Easter season art with Dr. Jem Sullivan. The Lord never tires of forgiving us. It is we who get tired of asking for pardon. A tweet from Pope Francis today, thoughtful. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Today is the first anniversary of Boko Haram's kidnapping of hundreds of Nigerian schoolgirls. 219 of those girls remain missing tonight. Jason Calvi reports from Howard University.
Brian, 1 year of mourning, questioning, wondering where did these girls go? Here at Howard University, I met one girl who got away. Boko Haram kidnapped Patience and hundreds of her classmates 1 year ago. She managed to escape. 53 others also got away, 10 of them studying in the United States with the help of Emmanuel Ogobe.
They pray for the release of the girls. They pray for change in Nigeria. But interestingly, one of them has asked for prayers for Boko Haram. And she says it's because they don't know God that they're doing what they're doing.
In September, we heard one of the survivors describe her escape.
I decided to jump down from the trucks. I rather die that my parents have my cuff and buried than to go with them because we don't know where we are going. 219
of her classmates are still missing. The Bring Back Our Girls campaign went viral online. Pope Francis even tweeted about it. One of the promoters is Nigeria's former education minister. She's made a promise to the parents.
We would stand with you until there is no reason to stand.
And so the marches continue today in Nigeria.
Bring back our girls, now and alive.
The father of two of the missing girls says he's hopeful Nigeria's president-elect will help.
And now that Buhari is about to come to the office, I have full confidence that sooner or later we will see our daughters.
Saved. Until then, Patience brings new meaning to her name. Nigeria's president-elect says he can't promise he'll find the girls. He says he doesn't know where they are. Amnesty International just put out a new report that says Boko Haram kidnapped 2,000 women and girls since 2014. It says they were sold into slavery and forced to fight. Brian?
Thank you, Jason. Well, he was a pioneer of Catholic radio and television. This week, the Catholic University of America here in Washington celebrates the impact of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Wyatt Goolsby joins us from the CUA campus tonight with a look at this new exhibit.
Brian, this year marks the 75th anniversary of Archbishop Fulton Sheen's first appearance on television, and so the Catholic University of America is celebrating his life and legacy with a number of historical exhibits as well as events going on throughout campus this week. Archbishop Sheen had a long-running TV and radio career spreading the Word of God. He's best known as a TV personality on his show Life is Worth Living, which first aired in the 1950s. In addition to that, Archbishop Sheen was a prolific writer. He taught religion and philosophy on Catholic University of America's campus for 23 years, and a number of his writings, books, and other items are here on display this week. Catholic University is also marking Archbishop Sheen's journey on the path to sainthood. Pope Benedict XVI declared Archbishop Sheen venerable in 2012, and a miracle was attributed to him was approved in 2014.
I think it makes an example of holiness for our students something very accessible. And this is a person who prayed in Caldwell Chapel, who taught in McMahon, who checked books out of Mullen Library, and he became a man of incredible holiness. And I think that that makes the saints more real to them as somebody that they could really follow his example in a place where he was.
The Catholic University of America will also host a memorial classroom dedication in honor of Archbishop Sheen tomorrow. Organizers here on campus say they hope Catholics everywhere will take the time to learn about the life of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. They say his life as an evangelist, scholar, and potential saint make him a role model for the new evangelization. Brian?
All right, Wyatt Goolsby at Catholic University, thank you. Dr. Jem Sullivan, author of Beauty of Faith, is back with us tonight. There's beautiful artwork that's connected with this beautiful Easter season. Let's take a look at a couple of works that relate to Luke chapter 24. The two disciples are on the road to Emmaus. The Easter night, they're walking to Emmaus. Jesus joins them, and they don't recognize him at that point.
That's right. This striking 18th century American painting by an anonymous artist really brings to life that gospel account when Jesus walks, the risen Lord walks with the disciples to Emmaus. I'd like to think of the journey to Emmaus as the first Bible study, with Jesus as the teacher and guide, because we see Jesus here with his hands pointing to his wounds as he explains to the disciples the meaning of all of the scriptures in light of his death and resurrection. Jesus perfectly fulfills all of the promises and hopes of the scriptures. He perfectly fulfills the longings and desires of the human heart. And so he's walking with the disciples. Their hearts are heavy. They're burdened with these events that have taken place. And we see them walking down this dusty and winding road. The road seems to take a sharp turn towards us, as if the artist is saying, come and walk with Jesus too. Come and join them on this journey to Emmaus. If we are looking for the deeper meaning of the resurrection in our lives, we need only to listen to the words of the risen Lord as he gives us those comforting and assuring words, be not afraid, I am with you, I walk with you.
So they had so many questions, yes. And even Jesus asked questions of them. And so let's look at the second piece here, because this is where they realize who was opening up the scripture to them. It was in the breaking of the bread.
Exactly. Rembrandt was one of the greatest religious painters of his time. And we see that in this remarkable etching that he completed in 1634, titled Christ at Emmaus. And here, Rembrandt has captured that moment when something truly amazing is taking place. Jesus is sitting at this small table with the disciples. They've just been on the road to Emmaus, walking, and the disciples don't quite completely understand what Jesus has said to them until Jesus takes bread, breaks the bread, and gives it to the disciples. And then their eyes are opened. We are told that they say to one another, were not our hearts burning within us as he spoke to us, right? And so it's this wonderful moment, really, that Rembrandt captures the Eucharistic amazement in that phrase of St. John Paul II, that the disciples encounter the Lord in the breaking of bread, and they have this moment of Eucharistic amazement in awe and wonder, the great gift that the Lord has given them to them in the Eucharist.
And what a great gift our sacred art is to us, because it carries on those beautiful stories that we know so well. Dr. Jem Sullivan, author of The Beauty of Faith. It's so good to have you back with us, and we'll have you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. Up next, remembering Abraham Lincoln 150 years after his assassination. And an 11-year-old boy with an inoperable brain tumor gets his wish of experiencing the priesthood. Today in history, on April 14th, 1865, 150 years ago, President Abraham Lincoln was shot and mortally wounded by John Wilkes Booth while watching a performance at Ford's Theater here in Washington. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. And today, Washington marks that tragic anniversary with ceremonies and tributes at Ford's Theater. A special exhibition features Lincoln's top hat and the pistol John Wilkes Booth used to shoot the president that fateful night. The assassination came just 5 days after the Confederacy surrendered, effectively ending the Civil War.
Many people say that the Civil War, which has thousands and thousands of reenactors today, was the greatest event in this history. It could have been divided into two countries, but Lincoln held it together, whereas his predecessor didn't know what to do. And Lincoln grabbed the bull by the horns, and he succeeded. And he died at the moment that he was a hero.
Lincoln steered the nation through the Civil War, ending slavery. Booth and others convicted as conspirators were eventually caught and hanged. By the way, Ford Theater is a rebuilt rendition of the original Ford Theater. An 11-year-old boy who has cancer dreams of being a priest, and he gets his wish, in part, experiencing what it's like to be a priest for a day. Brett Halbrich has an inoperable brain tumor and is undergoing chemo and radiation. When approached by the Make-A-Wish Foundation, he said he wants to be a priest. The Archdiocese of St. Louis presented him with an appointment letter. He processed in with the priests, deacons, and seminarians for Holy Thursday's Chrism Mass. His feet were washed during the Mass of the Lord's Supper on Holy Thursday, and a seminarian loaned him a Roman collar. The priest helping coordinating all this says everyone wanted Brett to have a special day.
It was amazing, to tell you the truth, because, he could have probably wished for anything in the world. I mean, to go to Disney World or to go wherever he might have wanted to go. And those are great things too. But it really struck me that his desire was to be a priest for a day.
Father Smith says Brett got a realistic experience of serving in a jam-packed cathedral. Catherine Szeltner spoke with Brett from his Missouri school about his big day.
Brett Halbrich is the 11-year-old who has granted the priest for a day wish. He joins us now from St. Louis, Missouri at his school along with his principal. So Brett, what was your favorite part of being a priest for a day?
I liked serving the Mass. I liked looking around the church. I looked around the new cathedral and all the pretty the pictures and mosaics. Yeah, they're really nice.
And it was a packed cathedral, and you served along with the Archbishop. What was that like? Were you nervous?
Yes, I was very nervous.
So how did you stay calm beforehand?
I just, before I prayed to God, and then just a lot of times I held my, other hands and stuff, yeah.
That's perfect. Those prayers always work. So, Jill, I have to ask, what was it like for you when you heard that your student, Brett, would be a priest for a day?
We were very excited, and our 7th and 8th grade students actually attended the Chrism Mass, so we had the privilege of seeing him up there. So it was a great privilege, but it's always endearing whenever someone can have anything they want, and what he wanted was really to serve the Mass. So it says a lot about who he is, but it's also very much who he is anyway. So it wasn't surprising, but it was beautiful to see.
And Brett, you're 11 years old. When did you start thinking you might want to be a priest one day?
Well, I guess whenever I kind of thought it'd be kind of cool to do the Mass and everything. I thought it'd be cool to be a priest and
what age?
To do the Mass.
How old were you?
Well,
do you remember?
I don't know. I don't know. A couple of years ago.
Maybe 10.
Maybe 10, yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm still figuring out what I want to be when I grow up. So, Brett, thank you so much. And Jill, thank you for joining us from St. Louis.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
God bless that young man. What a beautiful story. And I think, Catherine, you are already what you're going to be when you're growing up. All right, until tomorrow, we invite you to like us on Facebook. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter. You can watch again anytime you like on EWTN's YouTube page. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Good night, and may God bless you.